Buyouts, near bankruptcies, rejections, and self-destructive presidents. Visionaries, honors, billion-dollar fortunes, and the admiration of America. All of these ingredients may be found in Campbell's soup. At first glance, the plot may be mistaken for a soap or soup opera. However, in their quest to establish the first kitchen staple, Campbell's experienced a roller coaster of highs and lows. This is their tale. Cannet. A French military commander, believe it or not, inspired the innovation that launched America's largest soup factory. Napoleon Bonaparte offered 12,000 francs to anybody who could devise a technique to preserve his army's food in the 1830s. Nicolas Appert stepped up to the plate, and canning technology was born. By 1860, commercial canning had taken off. Abraham Anderson, an icebox manufacturer, recognized the trend and jumped on board, establishing his own cannery. Joseph Campbell, a fruit merchant, discovered Anderson's plant in Camden, New Jersey 4 years later. The two were a marriage made in business heaven. They hit it off right away and created Anderson and Campbell. Everything from vegetables to meats to jams to jellies was canned by their enterprise. However, while Anderson and Campbell initially bonded, their connection eventually fell apart. Similar to the tortoise and the hare, Campbell expected quick development, whereas Anderson expected gradual and steady progress to win the race. Their competing views pushed them apart, and Campbell bought Anderson out of the firm, the first of many in their history. Anderson was succeeded by Arthur Dorrance, and the Joseph Campbell Preserve Company was created. However, the death of Joseph Campbell brought an end to the Campbell presence at the corporation, and the Dorrances took over.
Even if he wasn't my uncle, I'd be standing here saying, to our new boss, salute.
The mad scientist. Campbell's had expanded into ketchup by 1896. Beefsteak ketchup was a classic. It would be difficult to locate a kitchen without it. But Arthur Dorrance's nephew, John T. Dorrance, was not content with ketchup alone. His MIT and University of Göttingen degrees got him a slew of chemical employment opportunities. But his heart was with his uncle's business. Dorrance thought Campbell's required a chemical department. Food science, in his opinion, was the future. That vision was not shared by his uncle. Even after a lab was grudgingly allowed, John was nevertheless subjected to a slew of tiny print. He had to pay for everything himself with only $7.50 a week. Dorrance went from revered to unacknowledged, but he didn't mind since he could still work.
I'm sorry.
You smell that? What is that?
What?
What's that smell?
The cologne?
No.
Opportunity.
No. Money.
Oh, okay.
I smell money.
Okay.
Chris?
Trim it down. Soup was the perfect concept for a new product line for John Dorrance. Soup is a comfort dish now, but it was a delicacy in the 1890s. John Dorrance sought to make soup available to the whole public. Dorrance pitched his concept to his uncle, who quickly dismissed it due to the project's high cost. Shipping expenses troubled every 19th century business. Bulky cans took up a lot of storage space and were expensive to ship. John didn't want to accept it, but his uncle was correct. Selling soup would be more expensive than profitable. Soon after, John Dorrance had an epiphany that would determine Campbell's prosperity for the next century. Dorrance might remove the bulk from large cans. Condensed soup would make cans lighter and less expensive. Customers might afterwards add water themselves. Dorrance worked for months to create the world's first condensed food. American cuisine was going to undergo a major transformation. But there is only one issue. Dorrance got his eureka moment after much trial and error. The only difficulty was that, while Dorrance was an outstanding scientist, he lacked culinary skills. His soup mix, while chemically flawless, tasted awful.
I don't like your food.
What did you say?
I said I don't like your food, and I would like to send it back.
Dorrance used his resources and traveled to Paris to learn to cook. The world's culinary capital did not treat him well. He did grunt labor in kitchens for months, but at the conclusion of his journey, he was a culinary maestro. Dorrance resumed where he left off, and the outcome was excellent.
There's going to be no one here in 5 minutes to do that for you. Do it yourself now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your help. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Arthur discovered a fresh source of hope in his nephew. All of their worries would be solved by this soup. This technique would save transportation costs while also making cooking easier. It was revolutionary in every sense of the term. Until this moment, nothing distinguished Campbell's from the competition, and the competition was devouring them. At their worst, they lost $60,000 in a year, but this soup would be their rescue.
Another exciting soup with plump pieces of tomato and fluffy long grain rice. Use both in cooking too. Make wonderful sauce for eggs, fish, or meat. Try Campbell's great cream of vegetable soup and old-fashioned tomato rice soup.
The first time isn't always the charm. Campbell's was able to sell a can for 20 cents cheaper than their competitors, thanks to Dorrance's technology. There was no way for customers to resist. Surprisingly, they resisted. The launch was a failure. Most Americans had never had soup, therefore they didn't want to buy it, no matter how inexpensive it was. Everything John Dorrance created became meaningless. Campbell's was bankrupt, and the future was dismal. If the firm was to survive, they needed something to prove their product quickly. Then John Dorrance discovered their final hope. Paris was to host a World Fair in 1900. If Campbell's wins a medal, customers may have a renewed appreciation for soup. This was their final attempt. Fortunately, Campbell's received a gold prize in the soup category at the conference. Dorrance, who was already a scientist and entrepreneur when he returned to America, became a marketer. He redesigned the Campbell's label to put the medal front and center. The soup had effectively been announced the greatest in the world, and for only 10 cents, it was a wonderfully enticing offering. In a few months, sales surpassed $100,000.
A bowl of Campbell's Noodle-O soups and took away their napkins. Just to dramatize the fact that Campbell's Noodle-O soups have circular, spoonable, unspillable noodles.
A bitter tasty rivalry. But while the Paris exposition piqued the interest of customers, it also piqued the interest of the Heinz Company. Heinz was a major food maker in the 1900s, and they took losing to Campbell's personally. Campbell's had previously slipped beneath the radar of the major competitors, but their battle had begun. The story of the lone wolf. John Dorrance was the individual at Campbell's best positioned to combat Heinz. In 1914, he paid $3.4 million for all of the outstanding Campbell's stock, plus his uncle's interests. Campbell's was now solely owned by him. Dorrance did not aspire to be a master of all trades. He wanted to excel at making soup. Except for two products, Heinz outperformed him. Dorrance, as president, halted manufacturing of all products save soup and pork and beans. In fact, he renamed the firm the Campbell Soup Firm in 1921 to honor its finest product. Dorrance insisted on keeping everything in-house. While Heinz took out loans, Campbell's was entirely self-sufficient. Dorrance never allowed himself to become beholden to anyone who was not called Dorrance.
I'd like to speak to the guy who put this together. Mr. Sullivan, is it? Does he speak English?
Sir?
I'd like to speak with the analyst who seems to have stumbled across this mess.
Certainly. That would be Peter Sullivan, right here.
Oh, Mr.
The advertising assault. While Heinz and Campbell fought for America's wallets, Dorrance took a chance and launched one of the first mass advertising. Ads for streetcars more than doubled city sales. Dorrance also understood that Americans needed to see a concrete use for Campbell's soup. As a result, in 1916, Campbell released its first cookbook, Helps for the Hostess. Campbell's had sold 500,000 cans by the next decade. They later released another cookbook, Easy Ways to Good Meals. The business employed radio advertising in 1931. These commercials established Campbell's as the go-to soup brand for Americans. Sales surpassed $100 million in 1942. Heinz could not compete with Campbell's brand recognition. Too much, too quickly. When sales reached $500 million in 1958, Campbell's expanded into new markets. They paid $28 million for Pepperidge Farm in 1961 and Godiva in 1966. These acquisitions enabled Campbell's to surpass $1 billion in sales in 1971, an astounding achievement. Sales surpassed $2 billion in 1979 as a result of more acquisitions. Gordon McGovern became president in 1980, and he took the expression, "shop till you drop," a little too literally. Other companies were his preferred buy. Previously, Campbell's, following Dorrance's lead, rarely took loans. McGovern, on the other hand, borrowed money to buy nearly 15 businesses. Campbell's was burdened with the addition of 334 goods in 5 years, and basically couldn't manage it. By 1989, McGovern had reduced Campbell's profits by 90%, but soup sales persisted, offsetting McGovern's impact. Even in the 1990s, Campbell's Soups controlled 66% of the $2.6 billion US soup industry, and soup accounted for 50% of their revenues. Soup was once again their lifesaver. The enduring legacy. Campbell's is an authentically American brand. The red and white can is nearly as patriotic as the red and white flag. Campbell's revolutionized American food consumption and became a fixture in children's lives across the country. Campbell's marketed a product, but they also created a culture. Their history demonstrates that, while products are vital, advertising and manufacturing help to establish a company's legacy. Campbell's venture into mass advertising and mass production resulted in tactics that are being utilized today. Campbell's stood up to Heinz and prevailed because they established a brand. They verified the concept of customer trust, which firms continue to strive for. Campbell's product is unmistakably American.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click the like button. Subscribe and click the notification button if you want more daily updates on building wealth, personal finance, and achieving financial independence. And remember, the world is yours.